All right, all right. What's going on, everybody? It's Pat Grace here. Hey, check this out. This is the show, Pat Grace Real Estate Show, Kiss My Assets. This is where we open up our 25 years of Kansas City network and show you exactly how we're making a couple $100,000 a month passive. That's after we pay everything. And we built this big portfolio right here in Kansas City. We're pulling back the curtain, showing you the engine room, and bringing real people and real strategies and things that I use every day. And so today's episode is all about the 1031 exchange. I wish I would have known about this 10 years ago. And shit, that's a good question. I don't even know how long the 1031's been around, but I just started using it within the last 4 to 5 years. And it's been a game changer for me on the taxes. But we've got serious investors using this to legally defer taxes and to scale faster. And this is where you're either going to level up or you're going to write a massive check to the IRS because you didn't understand this rule. And so let's be clear, you don't lose your wealth because of bad deals. You lose your wealth because of taxes and timing and bad mistakes. And a 1031 lets you sell an investment and roll that property and that equity forward without paying capital gains tax right now. And so it's just leverage and momentum. This is also one of the most misunderstood tools. So I got a pro here today that's going to explain everything for you. This guy's a monster in the industry. We've got strict timelines. We've got 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. And if you miss it by a day, it's game over. So the rules about what qualifies, who holds the money, how you transfer title, you got to know all this stuff. So, but it's really simple. It's not that hard. And this strategy has been used to move from small rentals to big assets, from single family to multifamily, from low yielding properties to high yielding properties. Into something that might have stronger cash flow. I've seen people roll from different states into Kansas City, and that's what a lot of people are doing. They're leaving, San Francisco and Hawaii and places with high rent control and no cash flow, and they're coming to Kansas City where you have a better rent market, and they're 1031 and a lot of money when they sell their buildings and their real estate over there. But today we're going to break down what a like-kind property is. We're going to break down the timeline so you can't screw this up. You can't make the common mistakes, and just give you more information on how you're going to upgrade your portfolio to where this actually makes sense. And so our guest today structures these transactions daily. I use them a lot, and we're going to win big with this guy. And so no fluff, no craziness, no tax evasion, no nonsense, just a legal framework that real investors use to defer, compound, and build long-term wealth. So load up the comments, ask your questions, stay interactive, and we're going to be talking real numbers, real timelines, and we have real Kansas City examples. If you're selling a property this year and you don't understand this strategy, you might be close to making a big mistake. So let's get into it real quick. First, I'm going to talk about the market here in Kansas City. So I got on the screen the January metrics for closed sales. And, I wanted to talk about from January 25 to January 26. There's a 3.1 increase in closed sales. So that's good. We're up 3%. The average sale price is up 8% from 348 to 376. So that's good. The average days on market is up from 49 to 58. So that's almost 18%. I'm a round up guy. So to me, that's like 20. And so we've got a lot more days on the market. So if you're sitting here trying to sell your house, if you're a real estate agent and your house is taking forever to sell, it's common right now. I mean, it's not out of the norm or out of the ordinary. So be patient, stick with it, and just know everybody's feeling your pain. We're all feeling it. Um, Pending sales is up 12%, and inventory is up almost 1.5%. And so if you're looking at things in the market right now, it is kind of slow. We had a dip in the rates where a lot of things happened there for a couple weeks. And, if we just kind of talk about what's happening right now, we've got a war going on. We've got a lot of money leaving, a lot of capital leaving the dollar. That's why your gold, your silver, everything's flying right now. And you're going to have just up and downs like we've had in the market. There hasn't really been a rally. There hasn't been a drop. Today had a big drop, but the war, that's why. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of staying in the stagnant range. But more importantly, with this war, it's going to create more inflation. And with the Fed and the president not really getting along, I feel like in my perspective, this war is going to create inflation, and it's going to give the Fed more reason not to cut rates. And so I wouldn't be expecting rate cuts until he has to leave, which I think is in May. And then I think the first Fed meeting that the new Fed is going to take over is going to be in June. And I think you're going to see really aggressive rate cuts in June. So start positioning yourself, start positioning your clients. I think June will be time to refinance. June, July, we'll have a lot of refis. The market will probably become on fire at that point, and things should start happening there. And there's going to be a little window because he's not going to be able to cut rates for a long time. There's a lot of money leaving the dollar. There's a lot of people that don't trust the dollar, the United States. And so where people were investing in our currency, they're not anymore. And that is not good. And so we need to figure out exactly how to position yourself. And so be ready to take advantage, in the first part, in the second part of 26, maybe the first part of 27. And then after that, I think he's going to have to stop cutting the rate. There's too much stuff going on, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to be pulling the trigger on a lot of stuff in the later part of the year and the early part of next year. So I'm just kind of waiting a little bit. I haven't been too active in the market. But let's take a look at rents real quick. On the rental snapshot, we still have the median rents in Jackson County at about $1,500. The median rents in Clay County about $1,900. That's what the statistics say. I don't know about that. I got a lot of property in Clay County, and I feel like rents are dropping a little bit in order to get people in the houses. And so year-over-year rent growth is about 2 to 4% in Jackson and flat to about 3% in Clay. I kind of agree with that. We have not been raising our rents more than 3% up in Clay County in our good houses. Like a lot of my portfolio is at 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, and that, $1,700 to $2,200 price point. And right now, we're not raising rents that much. I might be going up maybe 3%, but that's about the max right now. Average days on the market for rent is 38 to 45 in Jackson, which is a lot, and 32 to 40 in Clay. So same thing. There's a lot of stagnation there. There's a lot of people not moving, a lot of things happening. And so I'm kind of feeling it. So I kind of agree with these statistics. The vacancy rate up in Jackson is about 8.5 to 9. Clay County is about 7 to 8. And I feel like that might be kind of high. I don't think our portfolio is probably more like 2%, if that, on the vacancy rate. So Jackson County, Missouri. This is kind of a repeat slide here. Let me look at this. I'm gonna skip this one. And Clay County, we kind of went over this as well. There was a big news article that hit. I think there's like 153 unit rental community that's coming into Kansas City. And I know there's some controversy with that, but there's 153 homes being built right off of Barry Road here. That's all supposed to be built to rent. And you can look it up. I seen it on the news the other day. Something you might want to take a look at. But, the need for rentals and houses are always going to be there. And the big thing they spoke about in that article was that it was the average rent they were saying in Kansas City is about $1,500. Well, the average price to purchase a home makes your payment at about $1,900 to $2,000. So it's way cheaper to rent right now than to buy. And that is something to take a look at. The homes are getting expensive. People's wages aren't going up to keep up with the inflation. And so, there is some controversy there. And, there are some people, if you know how to make money, if you can rent at $1,300 and play with that $600 a month and invest it and make more money than you could in the real estate market, that might be a smart play. But, I'm a big real estate guy. I always think owning something, I hate paying rent. I don't ever want to pay rent to anybody. So if I can own it, I'm going to own it. And so that's kind of my stance on that. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so I'm going to run through these real quick. Take a picture of this slide if you guys want. This is my mentorship program. If we can switch the slide real quick. We have, you can hit the QR code. We've got a lot of traction in this. It's an online course. It's super cheap, only $250. Gets you started, gets you into our network, gets you into our Facebook group. Really awesome way to get involved with what we're doing in this community. I've got a guy who just joined a couple weeks ago. He bought me a wholesale deal and we closed on it, and he made about 15 grand on his $250 investment. So do the math on that. United Real Estate, this is where our brokerage, and the big thing here is you can make 100% commission, and you can amazing support, technology, in-house training, full service brokers. So this is our real estate arm. You're going to see when we run through this, we've got a full service, one-stop shop type system here with mentorship, education. This is our real estate arm. The next one is our BDM program. This is our mortgage company. And this is something new that we just rolled out. And this is for anyone. It doesn't have to be a real estate agent. You could be an insurance agent. You could be a financial advisor. You could be an influencer. But this is a program that we're rolling out for marketing on our mortgage company. So you'll market our mortgage products. We give you all the marketing material you need. You do not need to be a loan officer. You don't have to have your NMLS. Your clients will get white glove service. The people you refer will get taken care of. We have a team of loan officers that are licensed, that have tons of years of experience. And this program covers purchases and refinances. So you would talk to your network, market to them about purchases or refinances. But this is really strong for real estate agents because you're doing this stuff every day. And so now you can legally, through RESPA, get paid a half a point for marketing our products. And the compensation is performed as a W-2. We'll hire you as a W-2 employee. This is important because when you're an employee, you can legally get paid. It's not a 1099 position. And to remain RESPA compliant, you have to fill out a monthly marketing form, which we give you all the marketing. So it's real easy, half a page, 1-page form you have to fill out. And you can earn up to a half a point on your marketing efforts for the deals that you bring. So a $300,000 loan, you'll make $1,500. And so real simple, real easy. I like this program. It's really new. And these contracts are, we're not paying for referrals. We're paying, you're going to be an employee and we're paying you to market. And the compensation is based off of marketing. So if you're interested, take a picture of the next slide. If you can switch the slide for me real quick and just take a picture of this next slide. there's the links that you have. You can click on this QR code. And the awesome thing, I had a roofer the other day sign up for this program, and he's now going out selling roofs, and he's now selling a finance option, and he's telling the people he can refinance their house and hopefully drop their rate and work in the roof or any sort of rehab the house might need, maybe new AC, new furnace, new windows, new roof. And so you just got to get real creative with this. If you're an influencer, you don't even have to be in the loan game. If you just got a big following, if you got a big network, whatever industry you're in, this is just another vertical where you can make some compensation just marketing to your current network. So I don't care, but real estate agents, this is really good for. But if you're not an agent, no big deal. Take a picture of this slide, and this will be something good for you. So now that I got through the, basically the sponsors, let's talk about 1031. So we have a deep dive into the 1031, and I'm going to set the stage. There's investors out here selling properties, celebrating gains, and then they're cutting six-figure checks to the IRS because they didn't know their options. And they say taxes are just part of the game. They say, I'll figure it out next time. And that's the noise. And while most of the people are cashing out and their cash is shrinking, we've been rolling equity forward, scaling up property after property and exchange after exchange. And today we have a guest that is an operator for a company that I use, and he can tell you what actually happens when you sell a property with real equity on the line. This isn't theory. This isn't CPA type jargon. This is real time, real paperwork, real decisions, and real people that actually handle the 1031 exchange. 1031 is not a loophole. Okay, it's a tax code. It's a tool. We can use it. And so just like any tool, if you don't understand how it works, you don't know how to use it, it can hurt you. And if you do know how to use it, it can make life easier. And so listen to what we have to say today. We've learned how to position from sales before they close, how to line up replacement properties before the market even knows we're buying them, how to move from smaller rentals to stronger rentals, from weaker assets to stronger assets, resetting your capital base. To us, selling isn't an exit. It's just kind of a redeployment. And so we're breaking down how 1031s really work, what qualifies, what does like kind mean, avoid common mistakes that kill deals, when the exchange really makes sense, when it doesn't. We're going to talk about protecting equity, compounding growth. Buckle up, because I know once you understand how this rolls, you're going to want to do it moving forward. And instead of cashing out, you'll never look at a property sale the same way. You'll just move it into another one. So we're going to pull back the curtain and unload the clip so you guys know everything about the 1031 exchange. Our guest today, he's a 20-year vet of experience in the IRC Section 1031 tax deferred exchange and complex real estate transactions. He's a division manager at asset preservation. He works directly with investors, attorneys, brokers, agents, accountants, financial advisors all over the country to make sure that the timelines and the deals are structured and protected, and he keeps capital moving. What separates him from everybody else is he doesn't just know the tax code, he knows how to execute. And he specializes in investor education. He walks clients through real world scenarios and shows sophisticated exchange strategies that actually work. He's built a reputation on customer care, precision, staying ahead of regulatory changes, keeping people to the deadlines. That's the most important thing. He represents Asset Preservation. This is a subsidiary of Stewart Title, one of the most respected, qualified intermediaries in the country. They've done over 200,000 1031 exchange nationwide. And if you don't understand, that's scale. And so that's experience with proven systems and processes. So we're going to bring on Greg to the show today. Hey, Greg, how you say your last name? I should have got that from you. I didn't want to misspell it.
All good, buddy. I appreciate you. It's pronounced Schowe. Greg Schowe.
Just how it's spelled.
Just Schowe. Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome, Greg. Well, let's start off, Greg, by telling the people exactly what a 1031 exchange is. And go ahead.
Yeah. No. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity. That was a pretty robust introduction. So you're right. It's the scale, man. So, I'll just be honest and be upfront. I'm not able to do all this without the back office, kind of what you talked about on your United side about your training and your mentorship. And I've got people that have been ahead of me. I've got people that are next to me. We do this as a team. So when you get me, you get our corporate office. When you get me, you get our corporate office and our exchange teams and our in-house counsel. And it's a team, and we lean in to make sure that we cover everything and make sure that we are on top of not only the compliance, but making sure that the clients that we serve, they understand fully what their options are, so they can make the best decisions out there. So I just going to say that because, like I said, I can't do it. I can't. That wasn't all just me.
Yeah.
It truly is a teamwork. So let's just jump in. Like you said, so 1031 exchange. You and I are on an elevator, Pat, and I've kind of come up with my own little kind of verbiage, my elevator speech. So when somebody asks me what a 1031 exchange is, I usually respond in this manner. I preface it as it's an IRS approved program, right?
Yeah.
I also preface it, and we'll talk some examples about it. I also preface it as an IRS approved process. So remember that term, process. And what the IRS 1031 allows owners of real property to do is defer up to 100% of their capital gain tax. And that capital gain tax in 1031 is for real property held for trade business or for an investment, as long as you exchange in the property held for trade business or for investment. So let me unpack this. And we're going to go through more in depth, kind of this overview definition. But notice I said, and I know the scope of work and most of the deals that we do, the 200,000 plus exchanges that we've done, they involve real estate. It's a real estate component. But what I think is interesting, and I think it's kind of interesting about the tax code actually says real property. It says specifically in the tax code that real property can be exchanged. And I'll go through in a few minutes, I'll go through some examples of things that are not real estate that still qualify for 1031 exchange that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's eye-opening to see what qualifies out of the norm of the real estate. So I think that's pretty cool.
Right.
The other thing is defer. I know I've heard terms of it's an avoidance. I've had people say it's an IRS approved program. That doesn't seem legit because all the IRS wants to do is take my money. Well, we've got investors that are deferring a lot of the capital gain tax, and instead of writing that check to the IRS, they can deploy that into other real estate, and they can scale their portfolio way faster than if they pay the taxes and reinvest whatever's left over. So yeah. It is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
It is a powerful tool. So, so that's kind of what I tell people as far as the definition of what a 1031 exchange is. And then we can kind of talk through some of the nuances and some of the things about it. But again, for the most part, and one thing to remember is 1031 exchange, it's section 1031 of the tax code. So that's where the name came from. It's been around longer than probably everybody that's going to watch this show. It's been around since the 1920s.
That 1031 code has?
Yeah, it started out in the 1920s.
Yeah, so I was one of those guys that owned a ton of property, was a buy and hold guy, selling all his property, and I was just paying taxes. I was that guy. And so for a long time, and I'm talking like a lot of tax, where I wish I would have known about a program like this. That would have been so helpful. So
yeah,
who qualifies to use a 1031?
Yeah, great question. So going back to that definition, it allows an owner. And what's neat about it is it allows an owner, whether they are a U.S. citizen or not, That's kind of a neat thing too. We work with non-US citizens that own real estate in the United States that still are able to do 1031 exchanges.
Huh.
So a valid owner, a tax owner, whether it's an individual or or a corporation or a partnership or an LLC, an owner of real property can take advantage of Section 1031 and can defer potentially up to 100% of their capital gain tax when they decide to sell a property held for investment.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, so if they're an owner, now let's talk about this. What types of properties are eligible for a 1031?
Can I be honest with you, Pat? This is probably my favorite part of the tax code. Like I've been known to dance on tables when I talk about this.
All right,
But
let's see.
I'm not doing it today because I got to get home. We're live, so we're not going to do that. Here's what's cool about it. Yeah, this is I'm on the edge of my seat. So what we do is we refer to in the tax code of a term called like-kind property. Now, what is like-kind property? Like-kind property refers to the nature, what we call the nature or character of the property rather than its grade or quality. So I'll give you some examples. I mean, we've done exchanges where somebody has owned an unimproved property, let's say a piece of land, just a piece of land that they held for investment. They've exchanged that into improved property, maybe with some cash flow to it. That's one example. We've had other examples where a certain individual has sold a duplex. Let's say they bought a duplex, they owned it for a few years, they decided to exchange it. They were able to exchange it into a retail property.
Yeah.
Single family rentals, we see this a lot. I see this a lot in my market. I'm actually born and raised in the St. Louis area, pretty close to Kansas City. We have a lot of people exchanging out of their single family rentals. And what they're doing is they're consolidating. So, if you've got, 50 or 60 or 100 rentals and you've got them spread out all over the metro, that becomes a pretty big line item for operational, line item and management. And it gets so complex. They're exchanging into a centrally located property like a multifamily, like a 10 family, a 20 family, an apartment complex. We've seen people do industrial buildings for investment, commercial buildings, medical buildings, storage facilities. The definition is really, really, like I said, it's the nature or character of the property.
Yeah. And so I kind of wanted to go over that because this is something that I get asked a lot. Like people think, oh, if I sell a single family residential rental, I got to buy a like kind, which is another single family house. And that is not true.
Yeah.
And so like kind means anything almost anything. Like I've bought land, I'm a big house guy. So I always sell a house or I'll sell a package of 10 homes and I might roll that into an apartment. I might roll that into commercial. I might roll that into land. So like kind doesn't mean if you sold a multifamily, you have to buy a multifamily. If you sold a commercial, you have to buy a commercial. So I think that's something to really point out to the people out there. I have older people that are coming in and they're selling apartment buildings in, San Francisco, where the rent control is just ridiculous and stuff's happening. And because they're old, they don't want to deal with more apartments. They don't want to deal with tenants. So they might come over here and just buy 100 acres of land and roll that money into land. And so think about that when, I've had investors come from Seattle and sell a big portfolio of rental properties and then come over here and buy a Panera Bread commercial, just like a 5 cap and just sit on a property like that, or a Goodyear Tire or a Better Homes and Garden. These are just properties that I've sold to investors from out of the state that have came to Kansas City, because we do have cash flow here. Some of these places in San Francisco, they don't cash flow at all. So if you can show a 4 or 5% cap with a Panera or something like that, they're all in on a Walgreens or a CVS or whatever. And so that's something for the customer to know. Okay, so let's do this. Let's walk through the step-by-step process of how this will work, and explain the importance of having this set up before you close.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I get 2 or 3 calls a week like, hey, I closed last week. Can I set up an exchange? And I'm like, sorry, I can't help you. So one thing to remember, going back to my earlier definition, 1031 exchange is a process. It doesn't matter if you have a $20,000 rental or a commercial lot, or a multi-million-dollar, apartment complex. It's a process. It's the same process, and we actually provide checklists to every client that we work with. It's a checklist. Now, before I get into the checklist of the actual 1031, I do want to kind of go through, and I know, Pat, you kind of started talking about it. There's really two. One's an absolute non-negotiable. The other one is more of an internal, like, hey, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But the first non-negotiable in any 1031 exchange is that you have to set up a 1031 exchange agreement with a qualified intermediary. So you have to set up a 1031 exchange with us before you intend on closing a property that you want a 1031 exchange. You can even call us the day before.
Right.
I mean, we get a lot of our calls like the week of the closing. They get past their due diligence. They've got 4 or 5 days left. Getting it set up is really, once we have an initial, kind of a discovery, I kind of go through and kind of, discover how we're going to structure the deal. That may be take an hour, 2 hours at tops. But if you're closing, for example, if you're closing tomorrow and you call me at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday and you're like, hey, we're closing at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, can we still get this set up? I mean, we have, again, our team is versed on the East Coast and we have a team on the West Coast. We can get your exchange started on the day before and have it ready when you walk into the closing on the 9 o'clock the next day. So, but I cannot stress enough, you have to set up a 1031 exchange before you close. A couple of days before is fine. A couple of weeks before is fine. I'm even to the point now where I tell real estate professionals that I work with, or even the clients that I work with, call me when you list the property. Yeah. Like that way I know everything that's going to happen, and all I really need to do is just make sure everything's in order and I can turn it in. Even if you call me the day before. I've got a lot of people that'll call me, Pat. They'll call me the day before and they still don't know if they're going to do an exchange or not. Huh. They're just like, hey, I think I'm going to do one. So, even when you list the property, at least have an initial conversation with us. Right. That way I can make a note and you call later and say, hey, look, we're under contract. We're closing in 2 weeks. Great. I've already got kind of the preliminary stuff. Give me the things that I need and we'll roll through it and it'll be seamless. Yeah. And I get a lot of people calling me like last minute, like I had one yesterday. Hey, I'm closing on Wednesday. I still don't know if I'm going to do one or not, but I'm told I got to get it set up. All right. We got it set up today and he's going to close tomorrow. He may still decide not to do it, but at least he's set up because again, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Right. And I run into that. I mean, I still get that 1 or 2 calls a month. Hey, I closed last week. I just found out that I can do a 1031. Can I still set it up? No, you're paying the tax. Yeah. So again, that's kind of what happened to me. That's kind of what happened to me. And just to speak from experience, I'm on the Penderzac team. I think that's her last name, Jennifer. She's awesome. I mean, like, yeah, I call this lady maybe the day of closing, but I've done so many of them. We've got a whole system in place. She can send me my docs. DocuSign, I click the link, I sign it all up, done for me. Now they're dealing with the title company and the, this and that, but for the most part, it's on my side. It's really simple, but I have a system set up
in
Yeah.
place. So if it's your
You're,
first
you're,
time, or
you're in.
if you're only doing one, you might want to give them some time to talk to you and to set things up and get your information. They already have my information. They already have everything. So for me, it's real simple. I don't want you guys doing that. But, just like anything, being kind of cordial, giving somebody a 24, 48-hour notice would probably be smart in this situation. So let me ask you this. So, because I don't want people thinking, really, I'm gonna just the flippers. They cannot do. You can't flip homes and do a 1031. And maybe you can explain to them. So this is more for properties that, and this is kind of a gray area, I guess, like from what I understand. But there's some case law and some case studies where people have owned properties for only a year and they've 1031 and it worked. And then there's, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wanted to bring that up because
Yeah.
I don't want people, thinking, oh man, I'm gonna go buy this house in, March and flip it in June and I'm not gonna pay tax. That's not gonna work. And so this is for people who have owned the properties. They're buy and hold investors or owner occupants don't even have to pay tax, right?
Primary
They've
on
owned
the
the property for two,
on the
3 years.
primary residence side, yeah, the two
Yeah,
of the last 5, yeah. Primary residents have their own exclusion.
right.
Um,
So I'll talk to them about that, about the non-owner versus the owner, the buy and hold investor,
the
and
flip,
why that
yeah.
is.
Yeah. So here's what I want people to just kind of keep in mind about 1031. 1031 is a tax strategy. It is a tax transaction. And one of the things that we need to do when we qualify the deal is we need to discover who the actual taxpayer is. So, for example, we have clients that are real estate dealers that set up a separate entity, a federal tax paying entity. That's the taxpayer. They do all of their flips through that one entity, but that same person has another tax paying entity that they hold all of their long-term rentals in and qualifies for Section 1031. So if you are the Pats and the Gregs of the world and you want to do both, I can tell you you can do both.
Right.
But I can also tell you
You
the
got to
Pat
separate.
and the Gregs of the world, your tax advisor is going to tell you that you've got to keep them distinguishably separated.
Right.
You cannot commingle. You cannot commingle title. You cannot commingle funds and accounts and loans and it. So we look at it from a taxpayer level because 1031 is a tax strategy. We have the same person that has multiple tax paying entities. Some of them are doing exchanges, some of them are doing the flips. So if you're in that situation where you have everything under one LLC and you're starting to get into where, I'm maybe I've done a flip or two, or maybe I've got some rentals and I kind of want to do some flips. I would say strategy wise, get in early and get that division created early. Because if you're going along with one LLC and you're building this portfolio and you're building and you're building and you're building, if the IRS ever challenges or looks at your scenario at this level and they start uncovering things that don't look right, they can go back and look at everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're early in the game, or even if you are in the game and you want to make sure you're doing the right strategy, I would highly encourage you to have a conversation with your tax advisor and say, hey, I want to do some flips and I want to do some rentals. And again, like you said, Pat, there's case law that says the tax courts have sided with, you got to keep them separate.
Yeah. So I'm gonna explain to them what I do real quick. So just for everybody that's listening out there on the investor side, so I have 2 LLCs. Oh, I have more than that, but I got 2 LLCs. One is my flip LLC, and I basically close all my properties in that LLC. And so while I'm rehabbing the home, getting the home ready, I'm not in Kansas City. I have the luxury of renting or selling. I don't really care what the exit strategy is. So when I'm done with a house or getting close to being done, I'll put the house up for rent and for sale. Whichever one comes first, that's what I roll with. And so if a rental happens, I might wait till I get 10 or 15 rentals, and then I'll refinance all those rentals in a line of credit to my buy and hold LLC. And so that's where the separation happens. And so now, and then if I sell it and I flip it, it's already in the flip LLC. So I'm basically closing everything in the flip LLC. And then as I rent it, I put it over to another LLC. Now it's in a buy and hold LLC. And all my 1031s come from my buy and hold LLC. I can't really 1031 any flip. You can't do that. If you could, that would be great, but you can't.
Yeah. It'd be so much easier. They don't make it easy, but I mean, they have something to work with. But yeah,
Trump needs to make that happen, dude. Like,
if they can figure the flip out, oh, look out! It's on.
If you can not pay capital gains on your flips, man, that would be great. But but that is not the case right now. Okay, let's go over the 45-day and the 180-day rule.
Yeah. So let's build on that process. So
so step by step.
Yeah, we're good. Set up the exchange. The other thing that I do non-negotiable is I actually tell them to talk to their tax advisor. And real quick, I've actually had people tell me their tax advisor says this particular scenario, based on what I've got going on, 1031 isn't the best option, and they just decide to pay the tax. That's the tax side of the equation talking. I mean, I literally last week I had somebody say, you know what, my CPA said I'm selling a $230,000 house. I've got this and this, but in the big picture, it doesn't make sense for me to do a 1031 exchange. I'm just going to sell it, pay the tax. I'm like, okay, great. I at least want them to have a conversation with their tax advisor.
Yeah.
Because again, 1031 is a great option, but it may not be the best option. It just depends on the scenario at the time. So that's the process. So let's get started. So we set up a 1031 exchange. We're going to sell a property. When we set up and close on that property, that's when our exchange period starts. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the 1031, because there's some very critical timelines when you do a 1031 exchange. So when you close on the property, your exchange starts. And once your exchange starts, you have two important numbers. The first number is the 45-day identification period. The other important number is you have a 180-day exchange period, or your tax filing date, whichever is sooner. So if we close today on our exchange, tomorrow is technically day one of our exchange. We have 45 days from today, and those are calendar days. Saturdays, Sundays, holidays are included in those 45 days. So by midnight of the 45th day, our team will send you a form to fill out, and you need to fill out an identification form. That's going to list the properties that you're then going to schedule the closing with. There he is right there. ID form. ID form. Yep. Yep. We send one to you. You fill it out. There's 3 different ways you can identify. We'll go into that in just a minute. The 45 days is the first critical number. The second is 180 days. So you identify 45. You identify property within 45 days. You then have 180 days, and they both run concurrent from closing, to close on the property you identify. So that's really the exchange period. So you set up your exchange, you sell a property, the buyer comes to closing. And one of the caveats about 1031, and this is kind of getting into a little bit of the weeds about it, the role of the qualified intermediary, what we do is we actually step in through what we call an assignability agreement. We actually step in and become the seller of the property that's being exchanged. We also step in and act as the buyer of the property that's being exchanged into, but that's just part of the 1031 exchange paperwork, and that's all in compliance with the tax code. So that's one of the roles of what a qualified intermediary does. And that's kind of the nuance of the actual process, the back end stuff. But for the most part, you sell the property, you have 45 days to identify the new property, you have 180 days to close, you get that done, you close it out, you complete your exchange, and everything's done. So that's really what kind of the meat and potato part of the exchange period is.
Yeah.
But like I said, man, 45 days.
That's not a long time.
It rolls, man.
Yeah. And especially like when you're trying to find a good deal or you're trying to, I mean, and so that's why making the decision, and like, so for me, it's real simple. All the buy and hold properties that I sell, if a tenant moves out and I get the home ready, if I get that house under contract, or if I'm going to start, I'm definitely doing a 1031. Like there's no way I wouldn't do a 1031. I do not want to pay capital
Yep.
gains from when I bought I just don't want to do it. And
Yep.
so me knowing this, and the other thing, I'm always buying property. So it's easy for me to replace. And so, if I've got a couple homes in the pipeline, I'll put them on the identification form and it's a done deal. And
Yeah.
so it's real simple, but you have to identify and go through the 3 identification processes, because um, that's kind of a thing
Yeah.
too. I mean, you've got the 3 property rule, the 200% rule, and the 95% rule on the identification form.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting about that is that I call it a stigma. A lot of people think that you've only got one option, which is a 3 property rule. That's the most common. So I take it from left to right. 3 property rule is probably the most common, and then there's what they call a 200% rule, and then the last one is a 95% rule. I honestly don't want anybody to go there, but I've seen people do it accidentally. But let's start with the first one: 3 properties. So for every property that you sell or exchange, you can identify up to 3 replacement properties of any fair market value. So the first option caps you on the number of properties, but it doesn't cap you on the value of those 3. That's the first option, right? The next option, let's say, for example, you want to identify more than 3, and you can. Then you automatically roll into the next option, which says the 200% rule. So you can identify under 200%, you can identify more than 3, as many as you want. So you're not capped on the number of properties, but you're capped on the value of those properties that you identify, which is 200% of the value of the property that you sold.
Right.
So if you sold for $1 million and you want to go out and identify 5 properties, you can do that. Just remember that the value of those 5 properties cannot exceed $2 million, which is 200% of the value of the $1 million property that you sold.
Right.
So that's the next common one.
Yeah.
The third one, real quick, I'll be honest, I mean, it's there. I don't like seeing people in that scenario, but here's what happens. This is what I've seen most happen. Let's say you're in the 200% rule and you're going through and all of a sudden you want to identify 5 properties. You sold for $1 million. You identify 5 properties, but the 5 properties are worth 2.5 million. What did that just do to your 200% identification?
Can't do it.
You went over.
Yeah.
So you automatically go into the third bucket, which says that you have to close on 95% of the value that you identified. So if I identify 2.5 million and it kicks me out of the 200%, I've got to close on 95% of 2.5 million.
Right.
For a valid exchange. It's out there, but I rarely see it happen.
Yeah. I've always used the 3 property rule. So I'm just kind of, when I do it, I identify 3 properties that I might be interested in. And so, like I said, if you wait until you close or a couple of days before you close, you're only giving yourself 45 days. If you already know you're going to be selling something, or there's a possibility of you selling something, you can be looking ahead of time. So you actually have more than 45 days. But the rule is from when you close, you have 45 days to go 3 properties that you can identify, and you have to buy one of those 3 properties. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Let me share a strategy, Pat, because I think this is crucial. So let's say, hypothetically, we have a property closing at the end of the month. Let's say 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with you going out and looking for replacement property. There's even nothing wrong, and this is a great strategy. There's even nothing wrong with you writing a contract on a replacement property before you close on the property you're exchanging. You just have to set the closing up after you close on the property you're selling. Right. This is a huge strategy. I mean, people are doing this because I've even seen people start due diligence on the replacement property before they close on the relinquished property, because they need that cash flow, first of all. But if they can get the exchange done within like 2 weeks, and they can be done. So I've even seen people write a contract on a replacement property and start doing due diligence on that property, maybe an appraisal, or, they do like a home inspection or a phase one or whatever. They're even doing that while their property they're exchanging is still under contract. And then once the property that they're exchanging closes, they're already 3 steps ahead of the game. They identify that property and they close on it and they're done. They don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, they can get it done in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, that is smart, and you don't have your money tied up. So another thing that people need to know is the qualified intermediary is going to hold the proceeds from the sale. So you're going to not get, if you're supposed to make $100,000, you're not going to get that money at closing. That $100,000 is going to go to the qualified intermediary, and they're going to hold that money until you identify the 3 properties and you close, and then they'll come to the table with that $100,000 and execute the purchase of the new property. And so that is something that people need to know, and that's a part of the code, and that's what makes this a 1031 exchange. You can't sit here and hold your $100,000 profit and do this strategy. That's not going to work. And so that's the whole design of this is, and maybe you go into why the investors can't hold the funds directly.
Yeah. So there's a provision in the tax code called G6, and basically it's a restriction. It limits the taxpayer's ability to pledge, borrow, or otherwise obtain the benefit. Right? The 1031 exchange is you're not allowed to touch the money. You're not allowed to benefit from the money during the exchange. It's still yours, but it's not yours, so to speak. The intermediary holds that money. The only way we can, there's some other exceptions, but the most of the common ones doing the exchange is we can use those proceeds to make either a down payment or apply that to the purchase price of the replacement property. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the process. That's part of the operational side of the 1031 exchange. The intermediary actually holds the money. And really, if I can be honest, I really ask this question, especially when we're talking, a higher number of a high volume of dollar amount. And I know, Pat, you talked about at the beginning, we're backed by Stewart Title. I always ask this question. I go, what do you think the most important part of a 1031 exchange is? Because remember, 1031 exchange for the most part is not really regulated at the federal level. There are some states that have kind of some checks and balances in place and things like that, and some qualifications you got to go through. But there is no like federal guidance or federal oversight on 1031s. So in my opinion, the most important part of a 1031 exchange is the security of your funds.
Right.
Now, most people, the FDIC coverage, we can get to 250, but if we're talking, a few $100,000, a couple of million, that's hard-earned money. And you want to make sure as a client, you want to make sure that money is going to be there when you need it to be there to get that exchange done. So I believe security of funds is probably the most prominent part of a 1031 exchange. And the security of those funds is just paramount. I think that's just, yeah.
So you guys have insurance or whatever on all of that?
We do. We have insurance coverage. We have fidelity. We're E&O insurance. We're bonded.
Yeah.
We have what's called a letter of assurance, and you can request that. And what that is that's actually a letter of assurance from our parent company that says that the funds that are in your account will be in your account regardless of what happens. They will actually honor that amount. And I mean, there's not a lot of people out there that are backed by a larger company like that.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about independents and smaller title companies and other companies that act as qualified intermediaries. There's not a lot of companies. I mean, there's really only 4, I think, large title insurance underwriters, and Stewart Title is one of them.
Yeah.
That letter of assurance is a big integral part of larger transactions.
Right. Make you feel safe.
Yeah, security of funds, man.
So let me ask you this: how much tax can an investor actually defer? What taxes are deferred? Is it capital gains only? And talk about the depreciation recapture.
Yep. So we go through, I don't go through personally, but we do actually have a formula. And when you calculate your capital gain, it's really based on a formula. There could be up to 4 different taxes that come into play, depending on the kind of property that you own. If it's just raw land, no improvements on it, that's just a straight across the board, a federal capital gain tax for most taxpayers, 15%, or if you're a high wage earner, it's 20% for a federal capital gain tax. In Missouri, most states have a state tax. Missouri, it's about 4.7. So right, just 4. I call it 5. I like round numbers. Call it 5%. So if you just have land, you're probably paying anywhere from 20 to 25% just right off the top. If you have a building on it, and one of the advantages of owning real estate are things like depreciation, right? I'm sure you and a lot of other, investors, they take depreciation against an asset. Well, when you decide to sell it and you decide to sell for cash, there's what they call the depreciation recapture. And currently it's 25%. So whatever you've depreciated against the property that you're selling, you either give 25% of that in depreciation recapture, or you can include that in the deferral and not pay capital gain in the 1031 exchange. So you got your federal at 15 or 20. You've got the state, if it's located in Missouri. California right now, I think California is like 14.6%. Just for California tax.
Yeah, just the state.
Just the state tax.
Damn.
And if you take an depreciation against an asset, there's a 25% depreciation recapture. The fourth one, this is kind of the kicker. If for example the client is a high net worth, and let's say they have a lot of what we call net investment income, like passive income, if they earn over a threshold, there's an additional 3.8%. So I've seen as little as 20%. I've seen as much as 40 or 40, in the low 40s on capital gain tax, depending on the kind of property and depending on the taxpayer involved.
So the depreciation recapture.
Yep.
You can roll that to the next one as well. So you can
defer all of that. Yep.
You can depreciate a property. And I think right now you can take 100% even bonus depreciation on a property from day one. You can keep it for a year or two, 1031 that property, not pay any tax on it, and roll it to the next one. And you can rinse and repeat this strategy over and over and not pay any tax.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people looking at this, a couple other outside of the box, outside of 1031, the bonus depreciation schedule. Another one that comes up a lot is what we call cost segregation.
Cost seg, yeah.
Yeah, people do a lot of cost seg. But here's the thing. Cost segregation is an acceleration of depreciation. On the front end, it looks good. But on the back end, again, it may not make the most sense to do it. But on the back end, you just need to know that if you decide to sell that asset for cash and not do a 1031, all of that front-loaded depreciation gets factored in on the back end.
Right.
So do you take it up front, or do you? So again, it's a strategy. And people are different. People like taking it up front. People like to wait on it and just do the straight line amortization.
I think taking it up front and pushing it out is probably the smartest thing to do. And so if you're listening and you don't know what to do, take it up front. Don't pay the taxes now. And then just 1031 into the next one, and 1031 into the next one, and just keep pushing it down the road. Is what I'm doing. That's what I'm gonna do.
And that's actually a great point, Pat, because Another stigma that I've run into even recently is that people say, well, is there a maximum number of 1031 exchanges that I can do? They're like, no, you can keep exchanging and keep exchanging. I mean, you can just keep exchanging.
Right.
That's the goal. I mean, the inevitable that I tell people is there's two things that are certain, and one of them's death and one of them's taxes.
For sure.
So, I mean, you can keep deferring to the grave.
Right.
And then once you pass on, what's neat about that concept is that your beneficiaries actually have a step up in basis. So when you pass on your real estate portfolio to your beneficiaries, they come in with a step up in basis, so that value gets to reset, right? To whatever that value is.
Wow.
And then they can keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, I've got some older people that, like they started off on the flips, and then they 1031 into a commercial, then they 1031 into an apartment, and the whole time they're taking they're not paying any taxes throughout the year. They're getting bonus depreciation, their cost segs, and they just keep pushing the bucket down the road. And then at the end, when they're 70, they're sitting here buying land where there's no tenants, no drama, no problems. I mean, they're dealing with farmers. And and so that's a really smart way. I think you kind of do it. It's kind of like deferring your taxes and your 401ks while you're killing it and you're young and you're making millions of dollars. You don't want to pay that tax. When you're older and you're not making all the money, pay the tax then is probably the smartest way to go. Okay, so we talked about you can keep exchanging over and over. We talked about the capital gains. Let's talk about this. Here's another question I get. What if I own the property for $100,000? It's worth $300,000, and I refinance and I pull out $100,000. I was told I wouldn't have to pay taxes on a loan. I wouldn't have to do that, and so kind of talk about that misconception a little bit and how that kind of works, because there's people that their basis in a property might be 100 and they refinanced for 100, and now they think their basis is 200, and so they sell the property for 250. They think they're only paying taxes on the 50 grand. And explain that one.
Yeah. So this is the math part of the 1031. So the math really comes down to what I call two different equations or two different buckets. So, and a lot of times people get them confused, or they'll put numbers in different buckets and they'll kind of combine them. But there's two different equations. The first equation, and I'll go back to your scenario. The first equation is the actual part of the exchange equation. So remember, the goal is full tax deferral, which is 100%. If somebody wants to defer 100% of their capital gain tax, here's what they need to do. They need to reinvest all of the net exchange proceeds at the time of sale. That's the first requirement. Right. The second requirement is they have to acquire property with equal or greater debt. So if you want to look at full tax deferral, there's two basic requirements. The first one is reinvest all net equity. And the net equity is basically your sales price minus your debt, so your loan payoff at closing, minus your cost of sale.
So let's do this. Let's do this, Greg. Let's give it a number.
Yep.
I've got, so people can understand, because I know a lot of people won't understand that. So let's talk numbers. So you have.
Well, I'm selling a property for $900,000.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got debt of $300,000.
Right.
I've got a cost of sale, commissions, closing costs, 1031 fee of $60,000. That gives us a net equity of $540,000.
Right.
So that $540,000 at the exchange closing is going to come to us. That's the net equity. That's the money we're going to hold. In order for me to satisfy full tax deferral, I've got to reinvest that $540,000
right
into the new property. I've also got to acquire new property with equal or greater debt of $300,000.
Right. And so I think it makes more sense when you talk the numbers to people like that. And so that, and at that point, you're eliminating pretty much 100%
Full
of
tax deferral. So for example,
deferral.
let's say we sell for 900,000. We got 300 in debt, 60,000 cost of sale. That's 540. Let's say we exchange into 1.2 million. We went from 300,000 in debt to $660,000 in debt because we reinvested all the net equity. So I
Right.
satisfied the net equity requirement. I spent all the money, and then I acquired with equal or greater debt. So I went from 300,000 in debt to $660,000 in debt. I pay zero capital gain tax. That's full tax deferral.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good, that was, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and I literally I call it a napkin test. I have a left column, value minus debt minus cost of sale equals net equity, and then the property you're selling and the property you're buying. And it's just a little quick formula.
Yeah.
That's for full tax deferral. To go back to your question about I bought a property for 100, I'm going to sell it for 300, but in the meantime I refinanced and pulled out 200. You got to when you sell it, you got to satisfy the debt part of it. The other bucket that I talk to people about is calculating your capital gain tax. And what the calculating your capital gain tax does, it does not factor in a mortgage. What it does is it factors in your first step is it factors in your basis. So your basis is what you originally purchased the property for. So let's say $100,000. What you also have to do is you have to add back in any improvements. So let's say you did $50,000 of improvements.
Yeah.
And
so
then
this is 150.
So you're 150, but then you also depreciated $50,000.
So you're back to
So your basis is back to 100. If you sold today for 300,000, it doesn't matter what you owe against it. You bought it, your basis is 100. You're selling it for 300,000. Your capital gain is the difference, which is 200,000.
Yeah.
That's how you factor what you're going to pay in capital gain tax based off of the 4 different taxes.
Right. But as long as you get into another investment,
yep,
where you could put the 200 in, and
yep,
it's greater than the old debt that you had of 100 grand, you're good.
or
And
200. Yeah, if you refi at 200,000. Yeah.
So you're good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's a people kind of get them mixed up, and you got to kind of separate them because you got to know what you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
We can solve it. I just need to know what you want to try to solve.
What's talk to them about a reverse 1031 exchange?
So reverse 1031 exchange is an option. Going back to our process on a regular, what we call a delayed 1031, you sell the property, you exchange, you sell first and you buy second. What the reverse variation allows you to do is it actually allows you to purchase first and then sell second within 180 days. What that does is that creates some urgency for a potential seller, because let's say you're out and you drive by this property, you drive by this property, you drive by this property, all of a sudden, boom, for sale in the yard, for sale sign in the yard. I want to go buy that property. Talk to the agent, you talk to the owner, like, hey, I need a quick close, I need to get out, here's my price. You work out a price, but in the background, you've got these other properties over here that you were wanting to 1031 exchange to eventually, but they're not ready yet. Let's say won't be ready for another 2 or 3 months. A reverse exchange allows you to actually go purchase the replacement property first. And what you do is you hire us to go out and facilitate the reverse. And again, it's another part of the process of a 1031 exchange, but it really creates an opportunity for somebody that just wants to go out and buy that property that comes available. They weren't expecting it to happen, or they've got some issues with the current property. They're trying to get some tenants out or evictions, or they're trying to do some, make some other changes. You can actually purchase the replacement property first. It's a neat little strategy for somebody to think about.
Yeah. And that's good for your big investors, like people who are buying all the time. Sometimes I'm buying property and I haven't sold the other properties, or I'm not ready yet, but I'm purchasing this $300,000 property. You can put a reverse 1031 on the 300
Yep.
and use that money too. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I think that's a pretty good strategy as well. And
It's a good strategy. There's a lot more layers to it. I mean, there's some entity structures and some other. I mean, we have a dedicated commercial team at our corporate office. That's all they do.
Yeah.
They've done hundreds.
I don't want to get in the weeds with that. There's just an advanced strategy for people out there who are advanced. But it's not something that you're going to run on the norm. You know, I mean, it's not what always happens.
Yeah, but it's an option.
Yeah, it's an option. Definitely, it's out there. And so I kind of wanted people to know about that. You want to talk about an improvement exchange? That's another probably advanced strategy for the advanced people out there.
Yeah, an improvement exchange. What it does is actually allows you to allocate proceeds of a 1031 exchange to make improvements to the property you're exchanging into. So, you know, you sell for $1 million, you have no debt. You want to go buy let's say you go buy a lot for $600,000, and you got $1 million left over.
Yeah, you're gonna build something.
You can again. You've got to set this up. This is pre-planning. This
heavy setup.
This isn't a call me 2 days before closing kind of thing. This is, but we do it. We do it. You know, hundreds and thousands of them a year as a company. But it's a way for you to deploy some of that equity into improvements. And again, it's the same 180 days, and there are some nuances to it. It's a deeper dive.
Yeah.
But an improvement exchange is exactly it. It allows you to allocate exchange proceeds, and it's just another option to explore. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, then we look at other strategies or other options.
Yeah. So let me see here. I think we've got a lot of these questions answered. Do you have anything else, Greg, that you
I have a question. I have a question for you in the audience.
Okay.
This is probably my second most popular question. And if you want to, we can get into some pitfalls. We can get into some things not to do if we got a few minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
Here's probably the second most common question that I get. How long do I need to own a piece of property to qualify for 1031 exchange? Okay. If you're listening to this and you're a real estate agent, I tell this in my classes, CE classes that I teach. I never want you to give an exact answer, because here's what the 1031 tax code says. There is no minimum holding period. The tax code says that. There is no minimum holding period.
It's intent.
It's the intent to hold for investment. Some tax advisors have encouraged their clients to own it for a year and a day. Some tax advisors have encouraged their clients to own it for 2 years. But I know the tax code says there is no minimum holding period. What they do is they look at facts and circumstances around this idea of intent. We've actually seen exchanges where the client has owned it less than a year. They did a 1031 exchange and the IRS challenged it, and the IRS approved it because they could prove facts and circumstances.
That they were going to try and rent it.
That they rented it out, and they had a renter in there, and
right. Something happened. But if you put it on MLS right afterward or something, I mean, you're going to run into some problems.
And you could default back to what we talked about earlier, the dealer status, the flipper status,
right?
Things like that.
Right.
But there is no minimum holding period.
Right. And for a guy like me who sells a lot of property, the IRS wouldn't come in and look at this and be like, you know what? You've only held it for 6 months, and I see that you've sold these other 100 homes. Doesn't look too good. And so
you may or may not.
Yeah, you can't do that. And so, but I'm glad you brought that up and touched on that. Because that is, we talked about it earlier in the show, but we never kind of hit on it. I always kind of default to at least holding the property for a year. And if I can show that I've rented the property, I've had a tenant in the property, they moved out of the property, and then I sold the property, I feel like I could never get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Um,
If it's
and
ever looked at.
yeah, and so I've always operated. I don't know what, I'm not saying what to do or giving any advice here, but for me, I've always at least went through one tenant with the before I've sold and done anything with the 1031. So that's kind of how I've always done it. And what was the next one? I was going to ask you um, what challenges or what advice, so if you've got anything else that we missed or that I didn't touch on, go ahead and share it right now.
Yeah. So just kind of overviewing some of we call them the pitfalls. We talked about a few of them. The first one, the big non-negotiable, you got to set up, your 1031. We still see people, not do it. The second one, we covered it, not understanding requirements for full tax deferral. We kind of went over that. And again, it's just a simple, I call it the napkin test. It's figure out what it is. Not consulting with their CPAs, not really looking at, here's kind of the thing about it too. Not looking at the entire exchange on both sides. Like, you've got everything leading up to the exchange. You've got your exchange, and then you've got everything after your exchange.
Yeah.
So again, it's that story.
Right.
Right. How can you tell that story of, hey, I bought it as an investment, I rented it out for a few years, I did a 1031 exchange, I took the new property and I rented it out for a few years, and then all of a sudden you get audited by the IRS and they go, okay, all right, you looked like you had intent here, you had intent, okay, this one's good. It's basically telling a story.
Yeah.
Basically telling a story.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Go over this because this is something we didn't touch on. I set up the 1031 exchange with you, and you guys are holding the funds, and there's no identification that happens in 45 days, or there's no transaction that happens in 180 days. What happens to the money? What happens then? And let's go through that process, because people need to understand they're not going to lose their money. They're going to get their money back.
They'll get their money back.
Yeah, and they're going to have to basically pay the taxes at that point. And really all they're out is the fee that you guys charged, right?
Yeah.
What's the fee? What are you guys charging? Is it different for every state, or is there I didn't want to, I was going to ask what the fee was so people would know.
Yeah. So, I mean, our basic exchange, if you sell one property and exchange up to 3, it's $1,250.
So it's $1,250 to save all those taxes that you can save. If you don't end up doing it, or say you have $100,000 and that they're holding that you have to spend, and you have $300,000 that you're supposed to replace, but you only do $250,000. At that point, you didn't qualify for an entire 100% tax deferral, and so you're going to probably pay $50,000 in taxes on something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's what we refer to as a partial exchange.
Yeah,
where either they take some money at closing and they pay tax on what they call it the boot. If they take a check at closing, or if they don't reinvest all the net equity after the exchange, we return the money that's left over. That's taxable to the extent of the gain, things like that. So it's called a partial exchange. You'll get your money back.
Right.
It's not like we're going to keep all the money and you're never going to get it back. You're going to get it back eventually. It just depends on what happens during the exchange process. So go back to your example. Let's say you get into an exchange and you don't find a replacement property. As long as you don't fill out an exchange form, and this goes back to the G6 restrictions that I talked about, as long as you don't fill out an ID form and turn it in, we'll give you your money back on day 46.
Yeah.
The only thing we can do in a 1031 is we can use the exchange proceeds to buy a replacement property or a down payment.
Right.
And we're also bound by the restriction to not return your money until day 46 at a minimum.
Yeah.
So you can't have access to the funds. You can't, you can't receive, pledge, or borrow or obtain benefits of the money while it's being held.
Right. Okay, I got a question from Elijah, one of our agents. He said, if you build new, sell, repeat, can you 1031 exchange? Well, can the 1031 exchange work if you put all your liquidity back into it? Kind of confused on that. So if you build a new house and you sell it, can you 1031 that again? I guess is what he's trying to ask. So if I don't know if that can happen. I don't think so, but you
yeah, the first thing that I see, and again, it's probably need a little more clarification. Depends on if you're a dealer or an investor. If you're building new, are you a dealer or an investor on the front end? If you're an investor, if you build it and you rent it out, and then you exchange it,
for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're building, if you use it to build and then you sell it and flip it, you're running into the flipping rule.
Yeah. So you may end up being a dealer, a flipper up front. Again, that's part of the discovery. But if let's say you build a brand new construction and it's a rental and you hold it in an entity that's a buy and hold entity, you can 1031 exchange it and then take that equity and go exchange into something else and build a portfolio.
Yeah. And then I got another question, and I can answer this one, but can you use a 1031 exchange when selling residential and buying commercial? 100% you can. You can sell residential and buy multifamily. Yep. You can buy land. You can buy whatever. You can buy more single family. Yeah, you can definitely exchange into like kind means really another investment.
As long as it's a rental.
As long as it's a rental. So you definitely can roll into commercial, multifamily, whatever it might be. That's not a problem. Well, I think, is there anything else, Greg, that you want to touch on?
I mean, I can talk for 3 hours if you want to, but I'm not going to do that. It's my passion. I think you mentioned it. I mean, I've been in the space for 20 years.
Okay. Hey, let the people know how they can get a hold of you if they're interested. How do they get a hold of you? What's your email, phone number, whatever, website? How do you want them to get a hold of you if they're interested in doing some sort of 1031?
Yeah, so I have a direct toll-free number that comes directly to me. It's area code 833-252-1031. And then our website, our national website is apiexchange.com. I can either put that, I don't know if it will save it in the chat.
We'll put it up on the chat for you, or they can just get in touch with us and I'll turn you on to some people.
Yeah.
Man, I've made a mistake. I should have got a QR code or something to make it real easy for you before we got on. But
that's good.
Anyway, Greg, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you guys helping me and my personal stuff and my family and everything we've got going on. Our agents coming out, speaking to our agents. I mean, all the stuff you've done. If anybody's out there listening and you want to bring Greg in on to your brokerage, to whatever he's willing to, he does a lot of presentations. He does a lot of stuff. So I appreciate you, Greg. Thank you so much.
All right. My pleasure, Pat. As always, appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. All right. So we're going to tie this thing up, kind of put a bow on it and get this thing finished. We learned a lot today about 1031s, about saving taxes. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. You can always contact us. This is where the mentorship program is valuable for a lot of people. And episode 7, I'm going to be talking about cost segregation. And this is another huge tax strategy play that I use, so where I don't have to pay taxes. Between 1031 and cost segs is I guess the holy grail of not having to pay taxes as a real estate investor. And so that's going to be on April 7th at 7 p.m. I do these on Tuesdays, and I try and do them on the first Tuesday of every month. And so I look forward to seeing you guys, and I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any questions, if you need any help, you can always reach out. If you're looking to invest in Kansas City, we've got a one-stop shop, full service. We got the QR codes up here. You can reach out. We can help you buy, sell, rehab, finance, manage, anything you guys need when it comes to this great land of Kansas City, where the investing is really good. We got you covered all the way around, and you get my 25-year network, and you get my 25 years of experience managing all these companies. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you.